The wind howls through a scorched grassland. A mother clutches her child, running barefoot over sharp stones, her breath ragged. Behind her, the ground shakes. A giant predator eyes locked, teeth gleaming is closing in. There's no shelter, no time, just instinct. This is not fiction. This was survival. 1 million years ago, life was raw, wild, and unforgiving. And yet, this is where our story began. The sky cracked open like a wound. Rain hammered the forest floor, soaking through. Every crack in the rock, every thread of fur and skin. The world was shivering. In a shallow cave on the edge of a cliff, the tribe huddled together, silent, afraid, their backs pressed to stone, their stomachs tight with hunger. The smell of wet earth and fear hung thick in the air. Then it came, a blinding flash. A sound like the sky screaming. And just beyond the ridge, a tree exploded into flames. For the first time in their lives, they saw fire born not from the stars above, but from the world beneath their feet. It flickered furious, alive, golden. The tribe stared, stunned. Some cried out. Others bowed their heads. To them, it was a spirit, a god, a warning. But one boy didn't look away. His name was Kale. He was small, with a narrow face and cold dark eyes that never stopped moving. Unlike the others, Kale didn't tremble. He moved toward the cave's mouth, past the elder's outstretched hand, past his mother's sharp whisper. Something inside him stirred hot, wild, and impossible to ignore. The flame danced in the distance. Trees around it hissed and snapped. The smoke painted the sky black. He could feel it from here. Heat. The elders had taught them that fire was death. It devoured animals, trees, even the sky. But Kale saw something else. He saw light. The others stayed behind. Kale stepped. Into the storm, his feet sank into mud. The rain lashed his skin, but still, he walked. One step, then another, toward the tree that burned like a golden beast. And that night, under thunder and rain, mankind touched fire for the first time, not with fear, not with worship, but with wonder. Kale stood before the fire, like prey before a predator. The burning tree roared. Its branches glowed like spears. Ash drifted through the air like snow. Every instinct in Kale's body screamed to run, but something deeper, something older, told him to stay. He didn't reach for it right away. First he crouched, studied, waited. The heat pulsed like a heartbeat, licking at his skin. His eyes scanned the ground-scattered wood, cracked bark. A half-burned branch, still glowing but untouched by the deeper flame. That's what he needed. His fingers wrapped around it. It was light, dry, almost floating in his hand. Heat pulsed, through the stick enough to warm, not enough to burn. He held it close, breath caught in his throat. This was it. His prize. The fire flared again, wild and jealous, as if angry that one of its children had been stolen. Kale turned and ran behind him. The tree groaned and collapsed into itself, sparks flying into the dark. Rain slammed down harder now, and Kale knew the flame wouldn't last. He wrapped his body around the burning stick, shielding it with his skin, his hair, his breath. The path home was steep and slick. Twice he fell. Once, he nearly rolled into the stream. But he didn't let go. By the time he reached the cave, the tribe had gathered at the entrance, sexting to see a corpse. Instead, they saw a boy glowing. He walked slowly into the darkness, cradling the flickering branch like a newborn. Light spilled across stone walls that had never known it. Faces lit up with awe. For a moment, no one breathed. Then the elder stepped forward. He touched the fire with the tip of his staff, held it, in silence, then placed it in a pile of dry moss, and kindling end, blue dot. It caught a soft, steady flame, warm, alive. A ripple passed through the tribe. Not fear-belief. Kale had brought them the sun, not from the heavens, but from the earth and the world. Would never be the same that night. No one slept. The fire whispered and cracked like an ancient voice, and the people gathered around it with wide eyes and open hands. They didn't speak not because they feared the flame, but because they revered it. It was the first time darkness had not swallowed the night. Kale sat closest, his face glowing gold, his hands still trembling from the cold and the climb. He didn't smile. But something behind his eyes had changed, like a stone chipped into something sharper. The elder placed more sticks on the flame. It fed quietly, hungrily. Around them, steam rose from soaked pelts. Fingers thawed, faces warmed, and for the first time in memory, no one was afraid of the night. Outside the cave, the wind howled, but it was just wind now, not a god, not a monster, just air. Inside, the light flickered across the stone walls, like stories waiting to be told. Then came the smell, cooked meat. They had no tools for this, but instinct is older than memory. Kale's mother took a strip of dried root and held it near the flame. It sizzled, darkened, softened. She tasted it. Her eyes widened. Food could change here. Fire could transform. Soon they tested untold scraps from a failed hunt. The smell was wild and rich and new. It softened what was once hard, made it safe. Fire wasn't just warmth. It was invention. Children laughed. Elders wept. Not from fear but from something deeper. From memory. From knowing they had crossed a threshold. Outside, the storm finally passed. But inside, a new world had begun. Not just with sparks. Not with fear. But with choice. And so the first fire was born, not by chance, but by courage. By one child's defiance. By one tribe's hope. The plains were silent. Not the peaceful kind of silence, but the empty kind. The kind that whispers of bones hidden in tall grass. Where vultures circle for days. Where wind sounds like breathing. The rains had not returned for 2 seasons. Streams had turned to dust trails. Trees bore no fruit. The tribe's spears grew, dull, and so did their limbs. Even the fire, the miracle they once huddled around now seemed to flicker with less life. Hunger had a voice now. It growled in every stomach. It twisted every dream. And that's when Kale saw them. From atop a ridge of sunburned rock, his sharp eyes caught movement. Low to the ground, moving in formation. Silent, cunning, a hyena pack, 6 of them, snaking across the dry land, with noses high, ears twitching. Predators, scavengers, survivors. Kale watched them not as prey, but as a student. Because unlike the tribe, they were eating. They had found something. He crouched low, barely breathing. He wasn't supposed to be this far out, especially not alone. But Kale wasn't one to wait, not anymore. He had seen what fire could do. Now, he wanted to learn what the wild could teach. He followed them, from a distance. Step by step, one print at a time. His bare feet padded along the cracked dirt, mimicking their rhythm. Hyenas moved with a kind of purpose, never wasting a step, never hesitating. They hunted with their ears, their eyes, and their patience. Kale had all 3. Hours passed. The sun hung like a hammer above. Dust painted his legs. His lips cracked. But he pressed on, because they knew where food was. And he needed to know too. The world had shifted. This was no longer a story of fire and wonder. This was a story of shadow, of hunger, of learning not how to survive against the predators. But with them, Kale moved like a shadow behind shadows. The hyena pack weaved through the plains. Noses twitching, tails raised, eyes locked onto something far off. They made no sound, only purpose. Not brute strength, like lions. Not speed, like cheetahs. They hunted with cruel patience. Strategy. Kale admired them. They didn't fear the sun or drought. They didn't beg or wait. They took hours turned to evening. The heat lifted, but the land remained hard and quiet. Then, a sound cracked the silence, a grunt, deep and low. Kale dropped to his belly, hiding in tall grass. He crawled forward, inch by inch, until he saw it. A dying buffalo, old, wounded. Its leg was broken. It limped alone, flanks heaving, half blind from thirst. The hyenas closed in, but they didn't charge. They circled, teased, nipped. One dashed forward and bit at the beast's rear. Another barked and darted away. They were studying it, testing, learning how it moved, where it hurt, how long it would take. Cale watched every movement, memorizing, and then he saw the moment of choice. The leader of the pack, scarred female with torn ears, lowered her head and gave a low growl. It was the signal. Like fire catching dry leaves, the pack launched forward. Cale didn't watch the kill. He turned away. He knew how it would end, but what mattered came after. The pack feasted, dragging meat into shade, tearing bone from sinew. But not all at once. They took turns. They looked out for one another. They had order roles, a system. They weren't just hunters. They were a family. And Cale felt it for the first time, a strange, aching connection. He didn't belong to them, but he belonged near them, and in the silence that followed the kill, he stepped out from the grass. He moved slowly, not as a threat, not as prey. He kept his eyes low, his hands open. The hyenas saw him, ears perked, bodies tensed. One gave a low snarl, but they didn't attack. They watched, and Cale sat down at the edge of their kill, just far enough to be ignored, just close enough to smell the blood. He wouldn't take, not yet. He would learn. Night fell, and the land grew. Colder than bones, the stars stretched above Cale like ancient eyes. The hyenas had finished their feast. Some dozed with full bellies, others gnawed lazily at leftover bones. The leader, the scarred female, remained upright, alert, eyes flicking between her pack and the dark horizon. Cale stayed still, breathing with them. He felt hunger gnawing at his ribs, but he made no move toward the carcass. He didn't want to steal. He wanted to belong. And then, something extraordinary happened. One of the younger hyenas, small, limping, barely more than a pup, dragged a strip of meat toward him. It stopped a few feet away, sniffed the air, and dropped the bloody prize. It was an offering, a test, a moment of trust. Cale's heart thudded in his ears. He didn't rush. He bowed his head low, the way he had seen them do. Then slowly, gently, he reached forward and took the strip. The pup backed away, watching. Cale ate quietly. It was his first taste of meat in 3 days. The salt, the heat, the texture, it felt like fire again, this time in his mouth. The others didn't chase him away. They accepted him as something in between, not pack, not prey, something else. And in that quiet space between predator and human, Cale understood something no one in his tribe had yet dared to believe. You don't always conquer nature. You don't always run from it. Sometimes, you listen when. He returned to the tribe days later. His hands were no longer trembling. His bones still showed beneath his skin, but his eyes had changed. They were sharper, still animal. He brought back more than food. He brought knowledge, where to find prey, how to track movement, how to wait, how to move in silence. Lessons learned not from humans, but from the creatures they feared most. And when he spoke around the fire that night, the others listened, not because he was loud, but because he had seen. He had walked beside shadows and come back with light. The snow swallowed everything. The sky was a white blur. The trees were skeletons frozen mid-scream. Even the air hurt to breathe, sharp as flint, dry as bone. Somewhere deep in this pale silence, a boy wandered alone. His name was Ro, barely 9 winters old. A Neanderthal orphan, left behind when his clan was lost to the cold moon ago. He had no fire, no food, just a fur pelt draped over his shoulders, and a hand-carved bone dagger clutched tight to his chest. His feet crunched through the snow, leaving a thin trail behind, already fading in the wind. His lips were blue. His breath came in tiny bursts. Every step was a war. But he didn't cry, not anymore. He followed a sound, faint, low, trembling. It wasn't a growl, not the howl of wolves or the hiss of wind. It was something softer. It was weeping. At first, he thought it might be the forest itself. But as he pressed through the thickets of ice-coated branches, he saw it, a shape, large, still, struggling at the bottom of a shallow ravine. Half buried in snow, entangled in roots, lay a baby mammoth. Its trunk curled weakly, one tusk chipped. Its great brown eye blinked slow and glazed, thick with frost. Its legs kicked, but only slightly. The more it moved, the more the vines and ice held it down. It was dying. Ro stared. He had seen mammoths before from a distance, from behind the safety of adults. They were gods of the plains, towering, thunder-footed, untouchable. But this one was small. It was like him, alone, weak, forgotten, and just like that, the dagger in Ro's hand trembled. Not from fear, from decision. He could leave. He could wait for wolves to come, but something inside him said no. He slid down the slope, not toward food, not toward a prize, but toward a soul he refused to abandon. Ro reached the bottom of the ravine with frozen fingers and a pounding heart. The mammoth calf thrashed weakly at first, trunk flailing, eyes wide with terror. A small gust of breath burst from its mouth, warm, but heavy with pain. It was still strong enough to fear him. Ro didn't come closer. Not yet. He crouched low, laid his dagger in the snow, and slowly unwrapped his fur cloak from his shoulders. The cold bit into him like teeth, but he knew what he was doing. He moved forward, holding the pelt-wide offering, not threatening. The mammoth stilled. It blinked, trembled. Then Ro did something ancient, older than language, older than memory. He hummed, a low, soft sound, the same tune his mother used to hum when the world grew dark and he was too small to understand his fear. The kind of sound that made storms seem far away. The calf's ears, flicked. Its trunk reached out hesitant, curious, searching, and brushed. His hand. Ro didn't flinch. With that touch, something shifted. Not a bond made of words, not a pact of logic or instinct. A thread fragile, invisible between two broken things. Ro moved gently to the calf's side, assessing the trap. Thick branches, frozen mud, vines wrapped around one leg like snakes. He began working fast, fingers numbed by snow but steady with purpose. He tore at the roots, snapped the smaller branches, kicked loose the hardened snow. The mammoth grunted once in fear, then in trust. It stopped struggling. Let him work. Ro's hands bled from thorns. His feet ached, but still he worked. Because this was not just survival. This was defiance. He wouldn't let the ice win. And as the last vine snapped and the calf shifted, testing its freedom, Ro stepped back, breathless, shaking. The mammoth stood slowly, legs unsteady, but alive. And instead of running, it stayed. Snow fell gently now, softer, as if the forest was watching and choosing, for once, not to interfere. A boy and a mammoth, no longer strangers, no longer alone. Dawn crept over the frostbitten, ridged like a soft breath. Ro sat beside the mammoth calf, wrapped in the warmth of his fur cloak, again, though now it was shared. The calf's massive side radiated heat like a breathing hearth. Steam curled gently from its body into the icy air. They hadn't moved much. They didn't need to. They had survived the night together. But now the wind had changed. Somewhere far off, distant echoes, grunts, stomps, trumpet-like calls rang through the trees. The mammoth heard. They were searching for their lost one. The calf stirred. It stood, slow but steady, and raised its trunk to the wind. Then it turned to Ro, not as an animal to a threat, but as one soul to another. There was no sound, no cry, no farewell, just a gaze that lingered. And in that moment, Ro didn't feel like a boy anymore. He felt like someone who had chosen life over fear, connection over survival. The calf took a step toward the rising sun, then stopped, turned, waited. Ro rose to his feet. He didn't know what would come next, if the herd would accept the calf back, if they'd even allow him near. But he knew this. He couldn't let it walk alone, and so the orphan walked beside the orphaned, up through the snow-covered trees, across ancient ice, his hands tucked under the calf's thick fur when he stumbled, its great body nudging him forward when he slowed. Two shapes against the morning light. One boy, one mammoth, one path. By the time the herd appeared, dozens of towering mammoths, thundering through the white. The calf let out a soft call, and one of the great elders replied, a slow, booming rumble that echoed in Ro's chest like drums beneath the earth. Calf ran forward, stumbling, crying, trumpeting with joy, and was surrounded, embraced, welcomed. Ro stopped at the edge of the trees. He didn't step closer. He didn't need to. One of the larger mammoths, maybe the mother, turned and locked eyes with him, not with warning, with gratitude. Then they turned, slowly, one by one, and moved back into the white wilderness. The calf hesitated one last glance at the boy who had saved its life, then followed. And Ro stood there, not as an orphan, but as someone who mattered. Someone who had made a choice. Someone who had walked with giants. The moon hung low and full, too quiet, too bright. The valley lay in stillness, wrapped in silver light, but something felt wrong. The kind of silence that doesn't soothe, but warns. No wind, no birdsong, just the slow crackle of firewood and the gentle breath of a sleeping tribe. They had made camp near the cliff safe, they thought. They were wrong. In the shadows just beyond the firelight, something watched, eyes like coals, muscles wound tight. Beneath a pelt of golden fur, a saber-toothed cat, silent, perfect, death-shaped. It had been tracking them since dusk, waiting, choosing. It had chosen tonight, inside the ring of stones. The tribe slept in clusters, mothers with children, elders wrapped in skins. A single sentry sat by the fire, nodding slowly, heavy with the comfort of warmth. He didn't see the figure in the dark. He didn't hear it move. But one man did, Ihan. He was older than most, bones heavy with seasons, scars etched deep in his hands. He had seen saber-tooths once, long ago. He knew their silence, their timing. And suddenly he felt it again. He opened his eyes, and saw death standing at the edge of the firelight. The beast didn't growl. It stared. Ihan didn't move. His heart beat one slow, loud. Then he whispered one name, Kale. The boy stirred. His eyes opened, confusion blinking into fear. But Ihan didn't look at him. He stood slowly, deliberately, and stepped between the tribe and the cat. He held no spear. Only his breath. Only his voice. The saber stepped forward, and the tribe began to wake. Panic surged. But Ihan raised a hand. No, he said softly. Not yet. The fire flickered. The beast, Tens ed dot. The tribe froze. And in that moment of silence between instinct and sacrifice, he had made a choice. He would not run. He would face the darkness, so that the rest would see the dawn. The saber-tooth took another step, its massive paws silent, even on stone. Its fangs gleamed in the firelight, long as daggers, curved like they were carved by time itself. It wasn't hungry, it was certain. This was its moment. Ihan stood his ground. Behind him, Kale's breath hitched. The others clutched their children, backed deeper into the cave's mouth, but no one ran. No one dared. Ihan spoke not to the tribe, but to the beast. His voice was low, cracked with age, but steady. You're not the first I've seen, and I will not be the last. The saber didn't blink. Its ears twitched, picking up every movement, every heartbeat. Ihan bent slowly, lifting a half-burnt log from the fire. Flame curled around it weakly, but he raised it high, letting the smoke sting his eyes. The saber snarled. It hated fire. They all did, but hate isn't fear. Not yet. The beast lunged forward. Gasps rang out. Someone cried, but Ihan didn't move. He roared. A sound deep and raw, not from his mouth, but from somewhere older, from the center of his being. The sound of a man who had buried friends, fought hunger, and still walked tall. The saber skidded to a halt, its muscles coiled, fangs bared. But something in its eyes flickered. Confusion, respect. The firelight wavered, casting shadows across Ihan's face, like war paint. He took one step forward, then another. The saber let out a deep, guttural growl, a sound of warning. Ihan didn't flinch. The log in his hand crackled as the flame caught. More bark, growing taller, brighter, alive. He raised it higher, and then the saber turned. One step back, then two. Then it melted into the dark, its glowing eyes the last thing to vanish. Silence fell again. No cheers. No screams, just breath shaky, grateful, alive. Ihan lowered the torch and sank slowly to his knees. Not from fear, from relief. The tribe was safe, for now. But Kale knew what they had all witnessed wasn't just luck or fire or bravery. It was a man choosing to stand between life and death, so the future could pass through him. The fire burned lower, now tired quiet, but still alive. Ihan sat near its edge, his hands trembling slightly, his breath shallow. The tribe gathered around him slowly, not speaking at first. What words could they offer the man who had stood face to face with death and never looked away? Kale moved closest. He had always watched Ian quietly, from the corners, never asking too many questions. But now, for the first time, he saw something deeper. Not just a leader. Not just an elder. A man who had given something. Ihan looked at him, eyes heavy. "The beast will return," he said softly. "Maybe not that one, but others like it. Always." Kale nodded. "But you?" Ihan reached out, placing his hand on the boy's shoulder. "You will have more than fire next time." Kale didn't understand. "Why didn't you kill it?" he asked. Ihan smiled faintly. "Because not all victories are made of blood." He coughed once, twice, then more. Something was wrong. The tribe noticed. The healer rushed forward. Ihan's skin was pale, lips tight with pain. When they lifted his cloak, they saw it a long shallow wound across his side. Not deep, but enough. A claw, likely, as the beast lunged. It had marked him after all. Silence fell again, this time heavy with sorrow. They tried to stop the bleeding, tried to keep him warm, but Ihan knew. He had bought them a sunrise with his night. Kale sat beside him, holding his hand until it stilled. The fire flickered once, and then Ihan was gone, but his presence did not vanish. That night, the tribe buried him under a circle of stones near the fire he had defended. Not with weeping, but with silence. Reverence, the kind saved for the ones who changed something inside of you. Kale took Ihan's carved staff, not as a trophy, not as a weapon, as a reminder that even in a world ruled by fang and storm, a single person's courage could carve a path through darkness.